Right now, as you watch this video, traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has dropped by 70%. More than 150 ships are anchored outside the strait, waiting for it to be safe to pass. Brent crude oil has hit $106 a barrel. The International Energy Agency has declared the largest disruption to global energy supplies in history. Trump threatened Iran with death, fire, and fury. China, Japan, Australia, and France refused to send ships. And in 1943, 83 years before any of these events, Edgar Cayce described this very region. That strait. That gulf. That tension. With words that today seem impossible to explain. In reading 3976-26, archived, documented, verifiable, he named the Persian Gulf. And then he described what comes after the war. What he saw will leave you speechless. Don't leave. If this has already caught your attention, hit that like button now. Share it with someone who's following the news. And subscribe, because this channel goes where most don't. In 1943, in the midst of World War II, Edgar Cayce was giving readings about the future of nations. In reading 3976-26, he said, "Keep an eye on them in Libya and Egypt, in Ankara and Syria, across the straits over those areas, in the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf." The Persian Gulf. In 1943. When that region was practically invisible on the global political stage. And in reading 416-7 from 1935, he said, "The whole world will be set ablaze by militaristic groups." Now look at what's happening. According to the Maritime Tracking Organization UKMTO, since the conflict began on February 28, no more than 5 ships have passed through the strait per day. The historical average is 138 ships per day. According to the International Energy Agency, the conflict has cut approximately 8 million barrels per day from global supply. According to Al Jazeera and CNBC, Brent crude has risen more than 40% since the war began, reaching $119 per barrel at its peak. According to Wikipedia, Iran carried out 21 confirmed attacks on merchant ships as of March 12, 2026. Cayce named the place. He described the tension. He predicted the war over resources. In 1943. Here's where it gets disturbing. Cayce didn't just describe the war. He described the kind of leader who would start it. In reading 3976-13, he said, "America is unconquerable, except through internal division." And regarding leaders who confuse strength with victory. An individual's ability to use power for personal gain will bring disruption, not only to the individual but to those in power with him. Now look at what is documented. Trump said wars would end soon. Very soon, while the strait remained effectively closed. He said oil would drop, like a rock as soon as it's over, while Goldman Sachs analysts were revising their 2026 inflation projections upward. According to Axios, Trump asked China, Japan, France, the United Kingdom, and Australia to send warships to help reopen the strait. According to CNBC, no country has publicly committed forces so far. Japan and Australia said no. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, the U.S. did not consult European or Asian allies before launching military strikes against Iran, the very same allies it is now asking for help. Cayce described this pattern. A leader who acts alone, and then discovers the world isn't following. I need to stop here. Because I want to know what you're thinking. Go to the comments now, and write one thing. Do you think Cayce was describing this specific war, or does it sound like a coincidence? One line. One word. Because in the next few minutes I'm going to show you something that will make that question much harder to answer. Write it now and keep watching. Here's the data that no one is connecting. Before the war began, Trump was boasting that the price of gas had dropped to under $3 a gallon in December, the lowest since 2021. It was his biggest economic achievement. Now, according to Fortune, Goldman Sachs has revised its 2026 inflation forecast upward by 0.8 percentage points. It cut its GDP growth forecast by 0.3 points. And it put the probability of a recession at 25% in a scenario of prolonged disruption. According to Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil exporter, this is, by far the biggest crisis the region's oil and gas industry has ever faced. CEO Amin Nasser said, "The longer the disruption lasts, the more drastic the consequences for the global economy will be." And according to Fortune, Trump has run into something his entire operational philosophy was never designed to handle, a 34-kilometer-wide choke point at the mouth of the Persian Gulf that has no CEO to intimidate, no shareholders to absorb the losses, and cannot be restructured. In 1935, Cayce described a war over control of resources, over who has the power to stop the flow. We are living through exactly that. Hold on a second. Because what comes next is the part that impressed me the most when I read Cayce's readings about this period. He didn't just describe the war. He described what comes after. And what he saw on the other side of this conflict, it's not what you'd expect. But first, if this video is making you see today's news in a different light, hit the like button now. Share it with someone who needs to see this. And write in the comments, do you feel that something big is changing? I read them all. Here's the part that almost no one mentions. In reading 3976-29, the last major reading on the future of nations, Cayce was asked directly about what comes after the conflicts. And he said something that silenced the room in 1944. From Russia comes the hope of the world, not as communism, not as Bolshevism. But freedom, freedom for every man to live for his neighbor. In 1944, with Stalin in power, Cayce said that Russia would be a symbol of something different. Now look at 2026. According to Wikipedia and multiple sources, Russia did not enter the war. China called for an immediate ceasefire. The Western allies are hesitating. The isolation Cayce described to the American leader is materializing in real time. And the question he asked in 1944 is being asked again now. When a leader's strength is not enough, what fills the vacuum? Cayce answered with a principle. The nation that treats its neighbor as itself, that will be the one to survive the fire. Cayce was explicit about one thing most people forget when talking about prophecy. He said, "The future can always be changed by humanity." It is not a sentence. It is a warning. And the most specific warning he left regarding wars was this, from reading 3976-8. Not by the force of arms, but by the power of a man's love for his neighbor is that peace will come. Now look at what Fortune described. Trump has run into something that the art of the deal cannot solve, a strait that cannot be intimidated, negotiated, or bankrupted. Cayce didn't say the war wouldn't end. He said that what determines what comes next isn't military force. It is the choice of how to treat one's neighbor. And that this choice is being made right now. By every nation. By every leader. By every person watching. Including you. So what does all this mean for you, right now, today? First, the facts are verifiable right now. Reduced traffic in the Strait, confirmed by UKMTO. Oil above $100, confirmed by CNBC and Al Jazeera. Allies refusing, confirmed by Axios. Cayce reading 3976-26 mentioning the Persian Gulf in 1943, archived at edgarcayce.org. You can verify all of this right now. And the connection between what Cayce described and what is happening is, at the very least, hard to ignore. Second, Cayce was explicit that prophecy is not a fixed destiny. What he described is the result of specific human patterns, of leaders acting alone, of nations isolating rather than uniting, of wars started without consulting allies. Each of these patterns can be broken. The window has not closed. Third, what comes after this war depends on something no army controls. Cayce said that the periods following major conflicts are always fork in the road. Humanity chooses to rebuild with the same patterns or create something different. That moment of choice is approaching. And people who understand the pattern have an advantage that most do not. So remember what Edgar Cayce, in readings between 1935 and 1944, described about this moment. The Persian Gulf and the Strait, named in reading 3976-26 in 1943 as the point of global tension. An American leader acting alone while allies refuse, described in reading 3976-13. The war for control of resources, foretold in reading 416-7 from 1935. And after the war, a choice. The same choice that civilizations have always faced the moment the fire goes out. Cayce said that the future can always be changed. But only by those who know the pattern. Now you know. If this video resonated with you, hit the like button now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. And head to the comments. Write what you think. Was Cayce describing this war, or is it a coincidence? And if it's not a coincidence, does what he said comes next give you hope or worry you more? I read every comment. Without exception. Stay informed. Stay prepared. See you next time.